Hey, today I would like to analyze one of my own games. I played a tournament over the weekend. It was called the National Chess Congress and was held in Philadelphia. And in the last round I played against Grandmaster Mikheil Kekelidze, and it was, as always, the last round is always really important and I really want to win to end up with a good score in the tournament. So we'll see how I did. I started with e4, c5, knight f3, e6. So we see the Hann variation here, a6. But now after bishop d3, my opponent decided to play a sideline, queen b6. Main moves here, bishop c5, knight f6. And queen b6 is maybe a little bit unusual. The idea is that white has to, well, retreat his bishop now or protect it, and if he plays to knight to b3, then like later just plays the queen back to c7, and he doesn't really have lost the tempo. And the knight is worse placed on b3 than on d4. But I didn't want to retreat it, so I played bishop e3, which is offering a pawn on b2. But he didn't take, he played knight f6. If black takes here on b2, white gets some really good compensation here. You can easily see that white is clearly ahead in the development and will push with f4 and e5, and that's exactly the kind of positions I like, where I can just attack and have a huge initiative. So he played knight f6, played knight e2, he can still take, but he didn't. d5. Now I actually looked into my files and it says that castling here is the best move, but I couldn't remember it, so I played e5, which also looks natural and pretty good. We now have kind of a French pawn structure here, but you can clearly see that I'm very far ahead in the development. I've brought out all my minor pieces and black is still like down here. So I decided to still offer the pawn on b2 and just protect my pawn on e5 with f4. I could have also played knight 4 to b3, attacking the queen, and now after queen c7, f4. But I thought he might play, oh, what is this? Okay, knight c5, and I thought it's not that much. And I didn't really expect him to take on b2 because it looks really dangerous. Queen takes b2, but he did it because he also wanted to win this last game. And if you want to win, you have to take some risks. Castle, knight c6. And here I spent some time. So I played knight 4 to b3. Well, originally I want to play knight 2 to b3, but black has a good maneuver here. Plays knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, now bishop c5, and it's really strong. And, well, can't take because the bishop is pinned. And if I take here, then black would regain the piece with this check and would be better, still pawn up. So I played knight 4 to b3, also with the idea in mind maybe to trap this queen on b2, maybe play knight b1 followed by bishop c1, and my opponent anticipated that and played queen a3, so he can move back to e7 in the worst case. I played knight b1. I could have played c4 here immediately. I was not sure if he might be able to play d4, and this is why I didn't do it. But I can just retreat bishop f2 and then win back the pawn with knight f3 and knight takes d4, and I would be better here. So it was maybe a little bit better to play c4 immediately. I played knight b1 and he played queen e7. He could have also played queen a4, but I can understand how he played the queen back because it's always a little bit dangerous. His queen he always has to be afraid that his queen might be trapped. So he played queen e7 and now I played c4. Well, I'm still ahead in development, but I have to do something. I have to open up the position, because if I give him enough time, he will develop, and his position is pretty solid. There are not a lot of weaknesses, so I have to do something here. c4, d takes c4, bishop takes c4, and now he's kind of getting on the wrong track, playing queen b4. We'll see in the future his queen will be in danger, and this is kind of where it started. He had a strong move here, knight b6. I didn't see it at all. Well, the idea is if I take, then queen b4. Now it's a double attack on both bishops, and I cannot protect them both, so I will win one back. And if I move my bishop or play knight d2, then I can play the queen through c7. It's more natural than playing up to b4, and he can develop. I still have compensation for a pawn, but it's probably around equal. To queen b4 on the other hand, I have really good compensation. Knight bd2, bishop e7, and now I played maybe a little bit slow. I played king h1 because it was always annoying me, these things on this long diagonal that I always have to be aware of checks. So I played king h1, and here he castled, but he had a stronger move. He should have played knight d6 again. Now I thought I would just win a piece here with a3, but the computer shows black can sacrifice the queen. So if the queen moves now to a4, the knight would be hanging on b6. But he can play knight takes c4, a takes b4, knight takes e3, and we'll win this rook, and we'll win also this pawn. And we see black has two pawns, minor piece and rook for the queen, and position is about equal. Really complicated. Okay, play castle, of course, the natural move, but still his queen is feeling really uncomfortable here in b4. You see, she doesn't have a lot of squares. So I play bishop d3. Idea actually was to play knight d4 and maybe create an attack. So my opponent played f5. I didn't see that move coming really. But then I noticed I can also play the knight to c4, and suddenly the black queen is in danger. Right now actually it's threatening. I've threatened to play a3, queen a4, and knight b2, and the queen would be trapped. So my opponent has to do something. He played bishop d8. Yeah, it's already really difficult for him. I actually only expected queen a4. Now I renew the threat of knight b2 by a3, and now he has to create space for his queen, so he plays knight d8 to open up the square, but still knight b2, queen c6, rook c1, and I was surprised I couldn't find like an immediate win here, but position's just really good. Queen c2, and you can see here white has a huge advantage, of course. I played bishop d8 to give the queen square on e7, but I can prevent the queen from coming back by playing knight d6. And again, well, now there's also a threat of maybe bishop c4, so it's getting really difficult here for black. Play bishop c7, and now I just played first a3, pushing a queen to a4. Notice that queen can't really go to c3 because, for example, well, I guess there are multiple ways to win the queen, but for example rook c1, queen b2, knight c4, queen a2, and rook f2 wins the queen. So queen a4, and now knight c4 again, and now threatening again knight b2. And the problem here is that he now can't really play knight d8 because now I just win the bishop on c7, and of course completely winning. So he decided to sacrifice a piece to not lose his queen. Bishop takes e5. Now, well, bishop is protecting him. Square on b2, so I took. Knight c takes e5, and white is clearly winning here. Black got 3 pawns for the piece, but you still see his pieces are still not developed, and all my pieces are out, and my position's really active, so I should be clearly winning here. But my next move was a mistake. I decided to go into endgame here to play knight c5, and I thought it would be pretty easy to convert the advantage, but I saw the alternative here to play rook f4, and rook f4 is just super strong. I mean, it makes sense because I'm continuing the attack on the queen. I have queen c6 and rook c1. It's just completely winning here. Yeah, I don't know exactly why I didn't do that. Well, so I played knight c5. Yeah, I actually had this nice line in mind. if he plays queen c6, then I want to play bishop e4. I thought it was pretty nice. So if he takes now, then rook takes f8. This knight has to protect the knight on e5, so king takes f8. Now knight takes e5, knight takes e5, queen d8 check. If king f7, then rook f1, and if queen e8, then queen d6, and I win the piece back and clearly winning. So I thought, yeah, it would be a nice finish, but he didn't play that. He took on d1, f takes d1, knight takes d3, rook takes d3, and I thought he has to take now on c5, and then I would just take back and play knight b6, and I would be completely dominating. It should be pretty easy, but he has a good move here, b5, and he found that. So knight f5, knight takes here, bishop takes, rook e8, and here I realized that the position is not that clear yet, because he will bring out his bishop playing e5, e4, and I have to find a way to get through somehow, because if he gets too active, at some point maybe his pawns will become a threat. So I spent some time and I decided to exchange one pair of rooks. Play rook a1, e5, rook d8, bishop e6, and now exchange the rook and play rook d6. And it was important for me here that his rook is not going to be really active, that he cannot like somehow get to my ranks here, do something with his rook. And actually I managed to do that in the game. So he played rook e8. I could have taken on a6 now, but my pawn is not that important. I want to ensure that his pawns are blocked. So I played knight c6, attacking a pawn on e5 and now e4. Now bishop e3, and you can see now I blocked the pawns on the dark squares. And well, he played bishop c8 now. I thought it was a little bit passive, but it's kind of difficult for him now to come with a plan. King g1, king f7. Now I just continue to improve my position, and it's already difficult for him to find moves. If he just waits, I will just continue, bring my king in, and we'll just continue to improve my position. There's not much he can do. So he decided to take his chance and play rook e6. I thought this is just completely winning for me, but I guess I overestimated my position a bit. So I played knight d8 check, king e7, and I actually could have played rook d5 here too, but I thought this is just winning here. So we exchanged rooks, but I won another pawn. And now he pushed king d5 and he wants to get here and create a passed pawn and somehow create counterplay. It took some time, and yeah, I thought it would be an easy win, but I overestimated my position, I guess. I played knight h5. It would have been way stronger to play knight e8, because it just prevents king c4, knight d6, and if he plays a5, then I play bishop d2. Well, if he plays a4 now, then it's clear his pawns are completely blocked and nothing will happen, so he has to give up the pawn here, but now it just takes way too long, and I should be winning easily. Knight h5, king c4. Well, just thought I'd get this pawn h7, get my own pawn, and then just promote it. It's not that simple. Played a5, took b4, takes b4, a takes b4. Slowly I was becoming a little bit, afraid, and was a little bit panicking. So I calculated again for some time. I played knight f6, which was not the easiest way, I would say. Best would be actually to play king e2, and I was afraid here that his king would be too active. King d3, but actually it looks maybe good for him, but it's not enough. I will just give up the pawn on g2, and it's still enough for a win, because, well, I just have the pawn, and at some point probably black has to give up the bishop for a pawn, and then I need to show my skills winning knight and bishop against the king, but I think I could have done that. So I played knight f6, still winning, but it's getting a little bit more difficult. b3, I have to prevent b2, so bishop c1, king d3, and now I made final mistake. Well, not final, but I made a mistake. I played knight d5. I should have played g3 here. Very important move to prevent black from playing f4 at certain moments. So if now king c2, bishop a3, king d2, now I can play knight d5, and now you can see everything is blocked because I played g3 and he cannot play f4. But, well, I didn't play that, and now he actually had a chance to draw the game. But he played bishop e6, and now I'm better again, even though it might be still a draw. It's really complicated, we'll see. After bishop b7, well, problem is if now knight e3, then just f4. And if knight f4 check, then king c2, bishop a3, and now king d2. And I cannot, somehow I cannot stop both pawns. And I would need to repeat moves here. Bishop b4, king c2, bishop a3. Well, fortunately he didn't play that, because then I would have been pretty, well, sad. So he played bishop e6, knight f4 check, king c2. Well, notice I can't take on e6 because then king takes c1 and I can't stop the pawn. So bishop a3. And I actually thought his idea was to play king d2 here and somehow with his two pawns promote one to a queen, but I can stop them. Knight takes e6, e3 check, king f3, e2, bishop e4 check, so king d1, and now knight c5, b2, knight a4, and I stopped him in time. Queen, knight c3 check, and well, just take this one and let's win. But he didn't do that. He played bishop g8, and now I thought again, well, that should be winning completely. King e3, b2, take, and now I thought I just, well, you know, he has to give the bishop for this h-pawn, and I should be winning with the extra piece. But he's coming back with his king, and then I realized he's trying to get my pawn on g2. So I played h5, king d1, and I played h6. Actually there was another chance, but ultimately, objectively speaking, it's also a draw. If I play knight e2, king e1, knight g3, to protect the pawn, so bishop h7, now knight takes e4, f takes e4, g4, king f1, g5, now threatening g6 followed by h6, so bishop f5, g6, now king g2, king f4, and now he will play e3, and if I take it then his king comes back in time, it's a draw, so I have to take, and we reach a queen endgame with the h-pawn. And I looked it up in the table basis, it's a draw, but of course I could try on forever and try to win, and in most cases these queen endgames are really tricky. In most cases the side with the pawn actually wins, even though it might be objectively speaking a draw. Well, I didn't see it at all. Now it's stuck. Well, it happened to me recently already, so how do I get back? Ah, this way, okay. Cool. So yeah, I played h6, king e1, I played knight h5, not threatening knight f6, and he would lose immediately because he cannot prevent the pawn from promoting anymore, so bishop h7 is forced. And I played knight g3. The point is, if I